what I've learned is, no matter what you're selling on the cold call, what the folks on the other end of the line are buying is the connection with you, your personality. Can they connect? Can they relate to you some form or fashion? And then anything else after that is just icing on the cake. As long as you can sell yourself, and you've got it made. But if you can't connect with the person on the other end of the line, you're dead in the water.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Story of You. We have with us today a special guest by the name of Nick Moore. Nick is employed by Custom US and is the Director of Corporate Development, focusing on mergers and acquisitions. Welcome, Nick.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tell us just a little bit about what a Director of Corporate Development focusing on mergers and acquisitions means.
Sure. I know that's a mouthful. So in 2021, I joined Custom US as the Director of Corporate Development, focusing on mergers and acquisitions. And what that means is we go out nationally throughout the country, try to identify best-in-class restoration company owners and businesses. Talk to the owners, find out if there's an interest in either partnering with us through an acquisition or referral partnerships to develop a longer, lasting relationship to when the time comes that they're interested in selling their business, we're first in line to have that opportunity. So really, it's just to go out, introduce myself, introduce Custom, and try to gain those opportunities.
Excellent. Is there any particular type of water mitigation or restoration company that you are most interested in?
Oh, in the $5 to $30 million range, as far as revenue goes, we are only interested in privately owned companies, no franchises, no private equity owned restoration companies. But as long as they're doing some sort of restoration, whether water network, fire, board up, abatement, biohazard, et cetera, we're interested in talking to those owners.
Well, that's excellent. I'm learning as we go, because I did not know that a company such as yours existed. So I will definitely keep my eyes open when I come across water mitigation restoration companies, and send them your way if they seem like a good fit.
I appreciate that.
Well, so let's take it back and talk a little bit about your background. Where are you from originally?
So Winter Park, Florida. I was born and raised in Winter Park, Florida. I currently reside in Longwood, Florida.
Great. So Central Florida, lifetime resident.
Second generation lifetime resident. So
wow.
Obviously my son is now a third generation of Floridian. So yeah, we're planted here.
Excellent. I'm a lifelong Floridian as well, and we don't meet many of us these days.
Exactly. Farm few.
So what was it like growing up in Winter Park, Florida?
So yeah, it was a good experience. My mother had me relatively young, about the age of 17. So my grandparents assisted a bit in my upbringing, but I had a childhood as many others had. Fun, playing. I have a sister that's close in age, so we grew up. It was exciting. We did some fishing. We did a lot of camping as kids. Did a lot of family activities. We had a motor home back then, and we would travel and see different parts of the country. So it was a great childhood.
So are you an advocate for purchasing a motorhome?
I do not own one, and no, I rented one a while back. Last October, I rented one. We were going to do a North Carolina road trip, and then COVID happened, and then we just we had some illness in the family, and did never make it. But I will tell you, my knuckles have never sweated and was that white ever before. I was driving this 35-foot motorhome. It was a pretty scary experience. So I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen.
Yeah, that would be my fear too. When I was a kid, we took a motorhome trip, and the motorhome broke down in California.
Okay.
And then we barely made it home. And then when we did, it sat in our drive for the next like 10 years
That's about right.
until I think my dad sold it for like $500. So,
And so you've answered your own question, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So the investment's just not there. Rent them.
yeah,
Yeah,
renting.
exactly.
Absolutely. They have some gorgeous motorhomes I've seen too. Just
They
absolutely
are.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so, um, who were you in high school? What was your identity? Were you a jock, a school nerd, a band geek? What were you
Yeah.
like?
So ironically enough, I was not into sports. I was not a very athletic person. My hand-eye coordination was not there. I did a lot of weightlifting in high school, and I became very interested in bodybuilding in high school. But as far as being your typical jock, no, I was not. I hung around a lot of the football players, weightlifters, et cetera. But my main sport was a singular sport, and that was weightlifting and bodybuilding in high school. And that's really my personality for, my junior year throughout. Yeah.
So with the weightlifting and bodybuilding, that's something you did on the side, not as a school program?
Yeah, so they didn't have bodybuilding offered in the high schools. They had weightlifting, so I was a part of the weightlifting team for a brief time. And weightlifting and bodybuilding are not necessarily the same thing. I mean, you're weightlifting as a bodybuilder, but it's a very different technique and very different skill set. So I got out of weightlifting pretty early on in my high school career and just focused on bodybuilding.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So what's the difference for someone who doesn't know the
Sure.
distinction?
Yeah, so bodybuilding is more of an art form, right? So you're doing exercises to develop the physique. Powerlifting and weightlifting, you're eating, you're exercising only to lift more weight. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you intake as far as food. It's how can I become stronger? How can I lift more weight? And that's on the weightlifting side. Bodybuilding, there's a very scientific approach. You can only take in so many calories. You've got to expend and burn so many calories in order to obtain a certain physique look. So very opposite ends of the spectrum.
And they have, different types of competitions, right? They have powerlifting competitions where it's who can lift the most weight.
Right.
And then bodybuilding competitions where, that's where you see them,
that's it. Yeah.
Doing
that's
poses
it.
to see
like
how'd I do.
Yeah, but very similar. Yes. Yeah.
So did you continue with that after high school?
I did. So in '99, I graduated high school, and while most of my friends were going out, going to college and going to the military or finding their place in real estate or whatnot, I told my parents, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to pursue a career in bodybuilding." And they weren't shocked. They knew that I already had a passion for this, and they said, if you're going to do it, just make sure you give 100% and do it well. And that's what I did. I devoted 100% of my time to the sport. I lived with my parents, so most of my meals were cooked, provided. I had very little responsibility other than go to the gym, and live that lifestyle. And I had immediate success with it. I entered a few local competitions, won every single competition that I did early.
Wow.
And went on to become a nationally ranked amateur competitor. So I had some great success. But later in life, later in that process, I wouldn't say later in life, but later in that process, I learned that I wasn't going to make a living at this sport. There was just not an opportunity to provide, and I didn't really think it was going to be so cool living with my parents in my mid-20s for much longer. So I said, let me put this on the back burner and focus, on a more lucrative career path.
Sure. But it's great that you took advantage of that opportunity while you were young so that you didn't have any regrets and pursued what you were passionate about. What does a day-to-day life look like of someone who is preparing for a bodybuilding competition?
Man, it's Groundhog Day every single day, right? So it's you're waking up. At least I did. I would wake up at 4 a.m. every single morning, and I had a treadmill and a stair mill at the house, and I would do that for an hour. So that was my first part of my day, doing that for an hour. I would eat, 2 to 3 meals from post cardio. And then in my afternoon, I would take another 2 hour gym session. And then in the later evening, I would do another 2 hour gym session. And there would be a lot of sleeping. There would be a lot of eating throughout the day and not a whole lot of movement outside of just the weightlifting and prepping your meals.
So no cheat days?
I did cheat days. I wasn't a huge advocate of them. I knew some bodybuilders that would, eat 2 or 3 pizzas at a time on a cheat day, and it sounded counterintuitive to me. So I was never the biggest guy, but I was always the leanest guy on stage, and I attribute that to not having so many cheat meals.
Yeah, I mean that takes some serious self-discipline.
Yeah, I would agree. It's self-discipline and a little bit of insanity. You have to be both.
Competitiveness for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Ironically, I have a 17-year-old half brother. I told you my mother was young when she had me. So she went on to have another child, a half brother, and he is following in the footsteps. He is now a bodybuilder at the age of 17. And I'm a little envious at times. I mean, he's much bigger than I was at his age.
So he's 17 now.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
So you do you kind of live vicariously through him and get excited for his successes? Yeah.
I do. I try to make a gym session with him every week, at least one time a week to, do it. But I often wish that I could have done it at my peak while he's at his peak, and we could have had, a really great session. But, I'm 41 years old. The knees just aren't quite there anymore. The elbows hurt, and it's not the same workout, but it's fun nonetheless.
Well, that's exciting that you get to help and mentor him as he's, following in your footsteps.
Yeah.
So that self-discipline and competitive spirit, I would imagine, is still with you. Is that right?
Very much so. I try to stay, regimented. Most of my family was in the military, and I grew up with that military mindset. You make your bed, you cut the corners, and you into the bed, and you have a really regimented schedule. And I think with what I do and what I balance, I have a son who's 11, and it's just you have a lot of different things going on at one time. If you're not regimented, if you don't have your schedule in front of you, you're never going to make it. And I contribute a lot of the success that I've had to that, that I guess restriction that I built in bodybuilding, right? Like, so I've learned how to really manage a schedule and stick to a course.
So I always imagine bodybuilders and very people who have a lot of discipline to wake up, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and, start their day with the workout and just have everything really regimented throughout the day. Is that you?
That's it. That's my life, outside of bodybuilding and inside of the bodybuilding sport. That's how my life is. I know exactly what I'm doing from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep. Yeah.
Excellent. So you said at some point you realized that bodybuilding wasn't going to pay the bills.
Yeah. So I did. I quickly realized that. At the early stage, this was in the early 2000s. Most of my friends, like I said, they went off to college, they went into the military, or they went into real estate in some form or fashion. A lot of them became mortgage brokers. So they were having some success. This was the early 2000s. And I said, listen, I can try my hand in this. And I remember my first day, going in and pursuing this mortgage broker career. I get into this mortgage brokerage office, and there's about 15 of us. And there's a room, there's 3 rows of maybe 5 desks, lined up. to 15 desks. And on each desk, there was a phone book and a telephone, right? And so we sit down and I'm like, I'm this big bodybuilder guy, still, big and a suit and tie. First professional setting I've ever been in. And so the manager goes to us, he goes, all right, you're assigned A through C, you're through B through F, so on and so forth. And the goal was to basically call as many people as you could and find 5 potential leads that were interested in refinancing their home mortgage or a new home purchase mortgage. And I remember picking up the phone, not knowing anything about what I was about to say. I picked the phone down and the guy picks up the phone and I immediately hang up on him. What am I doing here? And so I composed myself and called the guy back, and the conversation went on. And I eventually got the 5 leads. I remember being kind of like middle of the pack. I mean, I wasn't the front, I wasn't at the end, but I was good enough to earn a roster spot and become a mortgage broker and have a pretty decent career. I mean, I was doing that from, I don't know, the early 2000s all the way up to 2014. But, obviously in 2008, that was a very hard time in the Florida real estate, the country, so to speak. But banks were collapsing, the real estate market was just falling apart. And it was tough. So we went from closing, I was closing on average probably 12, 15 deals a month to, I don't know, maybe 2 a month in the recession. So it was very difficult. And in 2014, it rebounded, but I was just burned out. I was ready to start a new chapter in my life at that point. But it was a good run. I had a great time. I learned a lot about sales. I learned how to cold call and not hang up on people.
Yeah, cold calling is probably in my top 5 careers I could never do.
Right.
I would never want to do.
Exactly.
It's you have to, I have a lot of respect for people who do that though, because it is constant rejection and a lot of, if you have to have thick skin and you have to bounce back and just keep going and not take it personal. There's a lot of life skills you learn.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's a lot of rejection. I mean, there's whatever you're selling. I mean, obviously there's different ratios of your close ratios depending on what you're selling. But I have developed a thick skin over the years for sure. But what I've learned is, no matter what you're selling on the cold call, it doesn't matter. You're selling mortgages, you're selling some type of widget. It doesn't matter. But what the folks on the other end of the line are buying is the connection with you, your personality. Can they connect? Can they relate to you some form or fashion? And then anything else after that is just icing on the cake. As long as you can sell yourself, and you've got it made. But if you can't connect with the person on the other end of the line, you're dead in the water.
And are those skills that you learned cold calling still things that you utilize today?
Oh, absolutely. I do about 400 cold calls a month. So it's
still, oh, wow.
Still. So I got to get out and, introduce myself to these restoration company owners.
Yeah.
And there's only one way to do that, right? Pick up the phone. Most of these companies are located outside of Florida, and, pick up the phone, call.
They don't have a restoration company networking group where you can just go meet a bunch of them at once?
They do. It's called RIA, and we're involved in that. And that's an opportunity to where, gather, all in one place. And it's a good opportunity. But for the most part of what I do, it's either an email or a phone call. Most of the times, business owners aren't returning emails. They've got their cell phone on their hip and you can get in touch with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So you go from, and by the way, I'm also old enough to remember phone books. I don't think I've used one in a decade, but I remember using them.
White pages. Yeah. I mean, they had phones with cords in it. It was a different world back then.
And phone booths.
Exactly.
All the different phone accessories.
Exactly.
So you where do you go next? Where does life take you after the mortgage business?
Yeah, so in 2014, my son was about 2 or 3 years old at this point, and I left. I left the mortgage industry. I didn't have a plan. I had a bunch of responsibilities at this point in my life, and I had no plan. I had a few bucks saved, and I said, I want to utilize my finance degree. I want to utilize the sales skills that I've developed over the last several years. And I still want to be in communication with people. And just by chance, and I think a lot of opportunities happen just by chance, just luck in general. I was in a Starbucks one afternoon in downtown Orlando, and I meet a managing partner of a local CPA firm. And we start talking, and he's telling me about the CPA firm. I'm basically saying, hey, I had a great career in mortgage. I'm unemployed. So one thing led to the next. And he said, listen, I'm looking for a director of business development. And I said, honestly, I don't know the first thing about public accounting or CPA firms. I said, but you can tell me more about it, right? And so he told me, he's like, listen, it's a very easy pitch and catch, right? I want this person to go out, meet with business owners, meet with CFOs of companies, tell them about the CPA firm, introduce yourself, and hopefully we can gain their tax or audit business. And I said, I could do this. This is, finance. I have the finance acumen. I can talk the lingo. I have the sales skills. I know how to be personable. So one thing led to the next. And I started as the director of business development for this local CPA firm and had a really good run. Ironically, back in 2015, when I started doing this, there was nobody doing business development for CPA firms. This was almost like a taboo thing, like, oh, I can't believe you're going and chasing business. It's so unethical of you. So this guy was a little bit ahead of his time. I was a big fish in a small pond at that point, but 2020 happened with the pandemic, and there was a shift in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is we went from closing 9 out of every 10 deals to closing maybe 4 out of 10 deals. And I'm like, what's going on here, right? Mm-hmm. And what I found is that we were offering one widget. So if a company wanted expertise at a very expensive rate, that CPA firm had that widget. During the pandemic, people were looking to save money. They would come to me and say, listen, like, I don't care what kind of industry expertise you have. I'm looking to save money. So I want the cheapest tax return, the cheapest audit available. And I knew 100 out of 100 times I was going to lose that business. So right then and there, I had that aha moment. I was like, I need more widgets. And how do I do that with a singular CPA firm? And the answer was I couldn't. So I had to go off. I left that company. I started my own company called Your CPA Brokers. And what I did was I partnered with several CPA firms throughout Central Florida, small ones, medium-sized ones, large ones, everything in between. So when a prospective client came to me, they said, listen, I'm interested in industry expertise. Gotcha. Got the CPA for you. I'm interested in price. Gotcha. I'm interested in consulting. I have a different option available for all of the clients' needs. And then I saw 100%. I mean, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I would just close deals. Mm-hmm. And it's worked very successfully. And that company's still around. My wife, Stephanie, she runs that company, day to day. She's doing an excellent job with that. But to my knowledge, there's nobody else doing this. And
I've never heard of that, but that's a brilliant business idea. Yeah. And it seems like you were perfectly suited for the marketing for the CPA with a finance degree and a sales background. I mean, that you seem like the perfect avatar for what someone would look for. And then to realize that there was a need for different types of CPAs for different needs and different lifestyles of different clientele and start your own business. I mean, that just seems like a brilliant business idea. So it's Your CPA Broker is the name of the business? Your CPA Brokers. Yep. So if someone, watching this stream or video is in need of a CPA, they could call Your CPA Broker and you could match them with someone that fits what they're looking for. Exactly. So, most of the clients that I deal with are commercial clients, right? They're business owners. So
they have a business and they have a personal tax return. Mostly I deal with construction or manufacturing companies, to be very general. And those companies tend to require an audit. But yes, if they have a tax return and an audit, and they're with the CPA currently, and they're looking to make a change, maybe they're not getting the service that they quite need, or it's at a fee that they're not really happy about paying, then certainly I would love to get a phone call on that and pair them with a proper CPA that fits their needs.
And I think that's particularly helpful because I've learned just through my experience that all accountants are not equal. There are some who really specialize and focus on personal tax returns and don't really delve into business that much. And then there's others who really just kind of do small businesses. And then there's others who do big businesses, some who really specialize in maybe medical practices or dental practices and legal practices. Just CPAs and accountants have different areas of specialty. And we don't know what that is when we're just Googling accountant or CPA. We may be calling someone who is not a specialist in what we need.
Right, exactly. And very much like your industry, right? I mean, you have, thousands or hundreds, I don't know how many different types of attorneys that practice different laws. It's very much in the CPA world, there's so many credits and incentives available, but they're industry specific, right? If you're a construction company, you may not get the same incentives as a retail outlet. So, you cannot be an industry expert on every single industry. I mean, you have to focus on, specific industries. And that's what I've done. I found the best in class, CPAs that focus on construction, medical practice, health, just you name it, I have it covered, but they're not with one CPA. I mean, it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you're looking online for a CPA, you don't know what their specialty is.
Exactly. Until it's too late, until you miss some incentives or, credits that you didn't know were available, that they didn't know were available. And then, a couple of years later, you meet a CPA that's well informed and they say, oh man, you really dropped the ball back here, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's costly to be with the wrong CPA for sure.
So, so you start that business and what happens next? Where does your career take you next?
Yeah, so I did started Your CPA Brokers, and simultaneously I met Andy Zabotny, who is the CEO of Custom US. And ironically, I was chasing Andy down when I was working business development for the CPA. I was trying to get Andy's tax and audit work for Custom US. And we reconnected in 2021, and I told him about Your CPA Broker, and this is what I was doing. And he said, yeah, that's all great. He goes, I'm interested in talking to you about this role I'm thinking about. He said, listen, we've done 10 acquisitions since 2016. I'm flying across the country every single week. I'm in a new place, a new time zone. And I'd really like you to come on board and focus exclusively on mergers and acquisitions, finding me these meetings to go out and meet with these business owners. So it was exciting. It sounded very exciting. It sounded, like this was an industry that was fast paced. It was something that I didn't really know a whole lot about. I didn't really know the restoration space all that well. I knew construction because that's predominantly what I dealt with in the CPA world. But I didn't know much about this business. And I was very upfront. I said, listen, I don't know the first thing about restoration, but if you give me a few months to kind of research and learn as much as I can, I'll get back to you, right? And so learned as much as I could about the business, and I dove headfirst in. And I've been here almost a year, and we're looking at closing, our next 2 deals by my efforts within the next few months. So it's exciting, and it's one of those things. This industry, you're seeing rapid consolidation. So there's 2 things that are happening. So you have private restoration companies that are small, that $5 to $30 million range. And you have these private equity companies that are coming in and scooping up all these smaller companies. Or you have privately held companies like us, Custom US, that are coming in and partnering with these smaller restoration companies. But the need to acquire is out there. And what these business owners realize is their $30 million companies cannot compete against $200 million company. They're just going to get lost in the sand, so to speak. And we've really developed a niche on identifying those best-in-class operators across the country. And there are a ton of restoration companies. So there's no shortage of them out there. We just got to get in front of the right ones to partner with. And we're doing it. And it's exciting.
That is exciting. And probably, interesting for you to have a little bit of a career change, just kind of mix things up and keep learning something new. Yeah,
I think that's where in the mortgage industry, I just woke up. I mean, there was no professional growth, right? I wrote it from the early 2000s to the, 2014. And, I was an expert among experts at that point. And I was on the rat wheel. I was just, doing the same thing every day, almost like bodybuilding, right? So the Groundhog Day, same outcome. And I could have had a very lucrative career in the mortgage industry because, since 2014, it's only went up, right? The real estate market has only gone up, but there's just no professional growth. And custom allows, me to not only learn a new industry, but go out and meet a ton of different people across the country and really get to learn about businesses, right? And I'm getting to learn about each business. I'm looking at their financials. I'm diving into them. How can we make them better? Where are they, lacking? How do we, help this company grow through an acquisition? So it's exciting. I mean, it's almost like college all over again, right? Like you're learning something almost on a daily basis.
So what I'm hearing is that you are someone who likes to constantly be challenging yourself and constantly learning and improving yourself.
I do. I really enjoy that. I feel like that's the fastest way to get old, right? Is when you stop learning and when you stop doing things. So, I got to keep up with my son. My wife, Stephanie, is pretty active. So, I'm keeping up with her as well. So, it's, you got to stay young, got to stay fresh, got to stay active.
Yeah. So you mentioned your son. What kind of things do you like to do with him?
So we're in flag football together. I say together. I watch, he plays, so
Thank you for clarifying.
Right. But he's into that. We are into fishing. We're venturing off to more fishing trips now, and we do the theme parks. Being in Orlando, my sister actually works at Disney, so we get in there often. But we stay active. We like to spend a lot of family time. The beaches are a favorite spot of ours, and for sports, he's into football, and we really enjoy that kind of day.
So speaking of football, do you have a football team that you watch, you follow?
I do. So I went to the University of South Florida. So at the time, we didn't have a very big football program, but I did go to school with a guy named Jason Pierre-Paul, who went on to later then play with the New York Giants. For that sake alone, I followed the Giants. As a kid, I grew up watching the Dolphins, and I was a huge Dan Marino fan, but I took a taking to this guy and ended up becoming a huge Giants fan. That said, they're not very good. They haven't been very good for some time, and they're pretty exhausting to watch. My wife and I.
That's the test of a true fan. If you are a fan, even when they lose.
I'm sure they're going to stop televising their games here pretty soon. But my wife and I, we started this new tradition last year. We went and saw, we try to go to a different location and watch a football game every year. So last year we went and saw the New York Giants play Washington Redskins in Washington. This year we've got October tickets to go see Green Bay Packers in Buffalo. So should be a fun game, better, exciting game than any Giants game this year, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm just a huge football fan in general. But if I had to pick a team, it would be the Giants, unfortunately.
Excellent. I can relate a little bit. My husband is a huge Orlando Magic fan. Okay. And they have not been good in quite some time either.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a funny story about the Orlando Magic. So my best friend, he and his brother were ball boys for the Orlando Magic, in grade school and high school and all throughout.
Nice.
So he's a huge Magic fan. And when I was doing business development for the CPA firm, my role was to go find, locations where we could do business development and marketing. And so the Orlando Magic invited me to their ticket sales, and they were showing me around, and they threw out a number for 4 seats, and I think it was upwards around $150,000. And
Wow.
I said, man, that seems expensive. I said, you guys are not that good. And he said, that includes food and drinks. And I'm like, I said, I tell you what, I said, it's a no for me. I said, but I'll get 2 tickets instead of the 4. So I'm assuming that's half price if you can name the 5 starting Magic players. I did not buy the tickets. He could not name them. So,
wow.
So that's how good they were and have been. The rep for the Magic could not name the starting 5 of the Magic.
Well, that is
not
a good salesman. No. You got to know your team.
That's right. Know the product, right?
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Well, good thinking. I'm going to have to remember that next time someone's trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
That is a good story. I have season tickets to the Magic right now, and I can tell you they've gone down in price from what they were when you were in the market.
Yeah, it's an exciting. I like the arena. I think it was called the Mercedes-Benz Lounge, where you could go eat and do all that sort of thing. It was fun. But it's just not a good product anymore. Hopefully, I think they got the first round draft pick this year, so
they did.
That pick is a good pick.
Yes, they did. My husband's been watching all of his summer league games and telling me how many points he scores each game, and he's very hopeful that things are going to turn around.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hopeful for the Giants in the same way, so we'll see.
Yeah. So then the companies that you're looking to acquire, is there specific states that you are doing business in or that you're looking for?
Right. So we're in approximately 20 states currently, and we're looking to expand geographically where it makes sense. West Coast. So you think of where do your natural disasters occur, right? They happen on basically the perimeters of the United States, right? The West Coast, the Southeast, the Northeast. So those are our main focuses. You have some tornadoes that run through the Midwest and that sort of thing. Freezes at the north. So you had a lot of water damage, Minnesota, Michigan, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, all across the country, but I would say if we're talking 1 or 2 specific geographic locations right now, the West Coast and the Northeast would be our primary focuses.
Excellent. So if there happens to be a water mitigation or restoration company watching this video, what would you want them to as they're considering whether to give you a call or not?
Yeah, so we are the largest privately held restoration company in North America. We've been around for 54 years. Andy Zavadny, the CEO, is a 3rd generation owner. This business has been in his family for 54 years. Andy bought the business in 2000, I want to say. We were operating at $1 million in revenue. Flash forward to today, we're operating at about 130 million revenue. We have 450-ish employees, and we are growing at a compounded annual rate of about 35% year over year. So we are growing at a fast clip. If you're interested in talking acquisition or partnering with such a firm, I would be interested in talking. And obviously, that potential acquisition partner the opportunity to grow that business. And we look for business owners who are not looking to exit right away. We look for business owners that are looking to stay on for at least 5 years to help grow the business and help make it earn out as far as growing the business and be incentivized on that growth. So it's been a good model. We don't deviate from the model. It's worked, and we've done 10 acquisitions since 2016. All of the owners that we've bought the companies from, they are still intact and still with us. So it's a great success story. And I think that Owners of restoration companies have, various options depending on what they need, right? If they're looking to exit right away, if they're looking to, move from the Northeast down to Florida and hang out on the beach, we're not the company. We probably would not want to acquire a company like that. Private equity company would soak that up all day. But yeah, we are non-private equity backed. We're growing this and we are all in. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in as a business owner, we would certainly be interested in talking to you.
Excellent. And what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you if they're interested?
Sure. My email is nick.moore, Moore, at custom with a K, KUSTOM.us. That's the best way to reach me. And I am always on my phone. My cell phone is 407-223-9655.
Great. So where do you see yourself? You have done a lot of different fields in your career. Seems like you've been very successful in all areas of sales. Where do you see yourself going in the next several years, both personally and professionally?
You never really know, right? Like you want to have the prediction, you want to have the, like I said, I have everything mapped out on my day-to-day stuff, but I want to stay in this restoration space for a number of years. I don't see myself growing old or, working myself out of a job here. I think that there's unlimited opportunities out there, at least for the time being in the short term. I would say in the next 5 years, I probably would want to begin exploring, upper management, maybe an ownership role in the company. And that would be my ultimate goal. I think, just devote a lot of time here, prove, what I'm worth, and then obviously, have some skin in the game at that point.
Well, that sounds like an excellent goal and something you are well on your way to accomplishing. So do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we sign off today?
No, I think that's it's been interesting. It's been great. This is one of my first Zoom meetings like this. I've done a few phone calls, very similar, but first Zoom. It's been great.
Thank you.
Looked you up, and you have a unique path as well, doing the personal injury and then the insurance law work as well. So I think that I have one of my best friends. He works for Freeman Injury here in town, and but he does not do any insurance work. Just obviously the personal injury. So it's a unique take on doing both.
Thank you so much. And I chose those fields because that's what I had experience in. I worked for the insurance companies for a long time, and I worked in those fields. And so when I switched sides, it was natural to keep doing those same things, just on the other side of the case.
Yeah.
So last question, what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? So it's not The Notebook. So my wife would be listening. She would want me to say The Notebook, but it's really not The Notebook.
Have you seen The Notebook? My husband won't even watch it.
So about a year ago, we rented out a movie theater during the COVID when all that was happening, and you can rent out a movie theater for $5. And we watched The Notebook for the very first. I watched The Notebook for the very first time in the movie theater last year. It was just her and I, and it was a pretty cool experience. Great movie.
Did you shed any tears?
A little, maybe a little.
The truth comes out.
I am a huge Gladiator fan. If I had to pick, that would probably be my favorite movie. I can watch anytime it's on TV. I find myself just watching it, and I probably have seen it, no lie, maybe 50 times from beginning to end. Yeah, 50
times. Wow, that is a classic, very good movie, and I don't blame you on. I'm more of a chick flick lover. But Gladiator definitely is a classic movie.
Sure.
Good choice.
Yeah, I'm more into the chick flicks now, not by choice, but by virtue of what's on the TV most of the time. But
yeah,
can't be.
You got to mix it up sometimes.
Exactly. Can't be all action. That's for sure.
Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you today. I really, truly appreciate you coming and sharing your time with me today. And with that, we will go ahead and close it out. Thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.